Hey everyone, this is Taehyung. The night I met her wasn't one of those movie perfect moments, no fireworks, no slow motion scenes, no music swelling in the background. It was just me, tired after another long day, sitting quietly in a small cafe near the Han River. I remember thinking about how quiet it was for once. No cameras, no rehearsals, no pressure to be V, just Taehyung. And maybe that's why I noticed her. She was sitting by the window, sketching something in her notebook. Her face was calm, focused, almost lost in the world she was drawing. There was something disarmingly human about that moment. Not beauty in the usual sense, not the kind that dazzles a crowd, but the kind that feels familiar, the kind that makes you forget where you are for a second. I didn't know why, but my eyes couldn't leave her. She looked up once, probably because she felt someone staring, and that's when it happened, that tiny second where our eyes met. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, but in that quietness, something inside me shifted. Like my heart whispered something before my mind could catch up. This, this is someone who will matter. I smiled awkwardly. She smiled back politely, then went back to her sketch. That was all. But somehow that small, ordinary exchange kept replaying in my mind long after I left the cafe. On the drive back, the city lights blurred outside the window, and my manager talked about tomorrow's schedule, another shoot, another performance, another day of pretending everything was fine. But I wasn't listening. My thoughts kept wandering back to that sketchbook girl and the stillness in her eyes. Fame teaches you to see people differently. Sometimes you forget what real connection looks like. Every smile feels rehearsed, every word sounds like it's meant for an audience, but hers wasn't like that. It was unguarded, real. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my phone, scrolled through social media, messages, photos, all the things that were supposed to fill the emptiness, but they didn't. They never did. I realized how lonely success can be when it becomes your whole world. And maybe that's why she lingered in my mind, because she reminded me of something I'd lost a sense of peace, of normalcy, of being seen for who I was, not who I was expected to be. I went back to the same cafe the next evening, telling myself it was just coincidence. Maybe I wanted another coffee. Maybe I wanted to see her again. I'm not sure which one I was lying about. When I walked in, she was there again, same table, same window seat, same calm expression. I froze for a moment, debating whether I should say something or leave. But fate or maybe curiosity made the decision for me. Excuse me, I said gently, trying not to sound like someone who's used to attention. Are you an artist? She looked up a bit surprised. Kind of, she said, smiling softly. I draw when I can't sleep. I laughed lightly. Then you must draw a lot. Her laugh in response was quiet but real. We talked a bit about art, about why she liked drawing people she didn't know, about how faces tell stories even when words fail. She didn't recognize me, or maybe she did and just didn't say it. Either way, it felt refreshing. When I finally left, she said, maybe I'll draw you next time. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled and replied, only if you make me look calm. That night, I realized something that scared me. It had been a long time since I'd felt this alive. The following weeks blurred into a strange rhythm. Between shoots, I'd find myself driving to that same cafe. Sometimes she was there, sometimes she wasn't. But when she was, I'd sit down across from her, and we'd talk like old friends who had just met yesterday. She told me her name, I'll keep it private, and slowly her world started unfolding in front of me. She worked part time at the nearby art store, lived with her older sister, and had this habit of humming quietly when she concentrated. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, she was just herself, and that honesty was magnetic. It wasn't about attraction in the way most people imagine it. It wasn't a rush of adrenaline or a fire that burned too bright. It was gentler than that, like sunlight warming a cold morning. It was comfort. It was home. For the first time in years, I felt like I could just be, no interviews, no personas, no weight of expectations. Just Taehyung sitting with a girl who didn't ask for anything except conversation. Sometimes she'd tease me about my coffee choices. You always order the same thing. Don't you get bored? And I'd reply, maybe I'm afraid of change. She'd smile, then maybe you just haven't found something worth changing for. That line stuck with me because deep down I knew she was right. I started noticing how my life revolved around schedules and cameras, and how small, simple moments like watching her draw or listening to her talk about colors and shapes felt more real than any stadium full of fans. There was a day we walked along the river, and she said something I'll never forget. You know, I think people don't fall in love because of how others look. They fall in love when someone makes the world feel less heavy. That sentence echoed in me for days because that's exactly what she did. The world stopped feeling heavy. But as my feelings grew, so did the fear. The fear of losing her to the chaos of my reality. What if she found out who I really was and everything changed? What if the peace we had shattered under the weight of the spotlight? I didn't want to taint what we had, so I didn't tell her. Not yet. I told myself I'd wait until I was sure she saw me, not the image everyone else saw. But life doesn't always wait for your timing. There's a moment in every story when the quiet turns into a question you can't ignore. For me, that moment came on a rainy Thursday night. I had just finished a long day of filming, hours of smiling, posing, pretending to be present when my mind was somewhere else entirely. My body was exhausted, but my thoughts wouldn't rest. They kept drifting back to her. The way her voice softened when she talked about things she loved. The way her fingers smudged pencil marks without caring. The way she looked at the world like it still had magic left in it. So I drove to the cafe again, even though it was late and the rain was falling hard. The city lights blurred on the windshield like melted gold. When I walked in, she was there sitting by the window again, her sketchbook open, a cup of tea untouched beside her. She looked up, surprised to see me dripping wet and slightly out of breath. You look like you ran through a storm, she laughed. Maybe I did, I said, catching my breath, but it was worth it. She tilted her head, studying me for a moment. What are you running from, Taehyung? Her question hit me harder than I expected. For a second, I didn't answer. Then I said quietly, from a life that doesn't always feel like mine. The air between us shifted. She didn't ask for an explanation. She just smiled softly, slid her cup toward me, and said, then sit. You can borrow my calm for a while. That night, we talked for hours. about everything and nothing, about loneliness, about art, about how the world can be both beautiful and cruel in the same breath. I remember telling her how sometimes I feel like I'm living inside a photograph. Everyone sees the image, but no one asks what's outside the frame. She listened, really listened, and that's when I realized what made her different. She didn't fill the silence with noise. She made silence feel safe. At some point, she asked me to close my eyes. Tell me what peace looks like, she said. I thought for a moment before answering. It looks like this, I whispered. This moment, right now. She didn't say anything, but I could feel her smile in the quiet. After that night, things started to change inside me. I began craving simplicity. I wanted fewer lights, fewer people, fewer masks. I started leaving my phone behind when we met, stopped checking messages, stopped pretending I had somewhere more important to be. With her, I didn't have to perform, I didn't have to impress. I could breathe. But peace has a price, and deep down, I knew I couldn't hide forever. Every time I left her, I carried this guilt like I was living two lives. One where I was Taehyung, just a man learning to love quietly, and another where I was V, the name that belonged to everyone but me. I didn't know how to tell her the truth. I didn't want her to feel betrayed. But the longer I waited, the heavier it got. Then one evening, as we were leaving the cafe, a group of fans recognized me. It happened so fast, flashes, voices, a crowd forming. I saw the confusion in her eyes turn into realization. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there, frozen, as my manager rushed in to pull me toward the car. When I turned back, she was gone. That night, I sat in the car, drenched in silence, replaying the look on her face over and over again. It wasn't anger, it wasn't even disappointment, it was distance. Like something fragile had quietly broken between us. I texted her later asking if we could talk. Hours passed, no reply. Days turned into a week. The cafe seat by the window stayed empty every time I went. I told myself she just needed space. But deep down, I was terrified that I'd lost her not because of who I was, but because I hadn't trusted her enough to tell her sooner. One night, after another failed attempt to reach her, I sat by the river alone. The same river where we once walked and talked about how love makes the world feel less heavy. The water shimmered under the streetlights, and I thought about what she said, that love is about showing up for someone, not just feeling for them. I realized then that I hadn't really shown up. I had hidden behind the version of me I thought she'd accept instead of trusting her with the truth. The next morning, I left a note at the cafe. I didn't sign it, I just wrote, I should have trusted you with all of me, not just the parts that were safe. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know if I'd ever see her again. Weeks passed. The days blurred together into a strange kind of quiet I hadn't known before, the kind that doesn't heal, just lingers. Work filled my schedule, cameras filled my days, and noise filled every space around me. But none of it reached me anymore. It all felt distant, like watching my own life through glass. I thought time would dull the ache, but it didn't. The world kept moving, and I kept pretending to move with it. Some nights I drive past the cafe and glance at the window, half hoping, half dreading to see her there. but it always looked the same. One empty chair, one cup on the table, the hum of life going on without me. Then, one late afternoon, fate decided I'd had enough pretending. I was leaving the studio when my phone buzzed an unknown number. The message was short. Meet me by the river, 8 p.m. My heart stopped. It couldn't be her, could it? I showed up early, nervous like a kid again. The air was cool, the sky painted in streaks of pink and gray. The river moved lazily under the fading light. And then she was there, standing by the railing, her hair tied up, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. I froze for a moment, afraid that if I said her name too loudly, she'd disappear. She turned first. Her eyes found mine, and just like the first time in that cafe, the world went quiet. You came, she said softly. I would have come sooner if I knew how, I admitted. She didn't smile, not yet. I saw your note. I swallowed hard. I meant every word. I know. She looked out over the water. You didn't trust me enough to tell me who you were. But I understand. I just wish you had. Her voice wasn't angry, it was tired, gentle, but filled with something deeper than disappointment. I wanted you to see me, I said. Just me, not the version the world made. I did, she whispered. That's the thing, Taehyung. I already saw you. For a moment, we stood there, both silent, both caught between wanting to hold on and learning to let go. I wasn't angry, she continued. I just needed to breathe, to understand what it meant loving someone who belongs to everyone. The words hit harder than any criticism ever could. She wasn't wrong. That was my life, borrowed time, borrowed space, borrowed love. I never wanted to make you part of that chaos, I said quietly. But you already did, she replied. Because when I met you, my world started spinning too, just slower. I looked at her then, really looked the calmness, the steadiness, the quiet sadness in her smile. She hadn't changed, and yet she had. Maybe we both had. Do you still draw? I asked, because I didn't know what else to say. She nodded. Every day. It's how I remember things that can't stay. I took a breath. And do you still draw me? She hesitated, then handed me her sketchbook. I opened it carefully, page by page, sketches of strangers, rivers, empty chairs, and then, on one page, near the back, there I was. Not the idol, not the polished image, just me, sitting by the window, staring out into nothing, a faint smile playing on my lips. You drew this after I left? I asked. She nodded. I wanted to remember the peace before the noise. That sentence, the peace before the noise, it stayed in me like a melody. I couldn't stop humming. We talked until the sky turned dark, about how much had changed, about what hadn't. There was no big confession, no dramatic ending, no promises we couldn't keep, just honesty. Before she left, she said, You once told me that peace looked like this moment. Maybe peace doesn't mean stillness, Taehyung. Maybe it means being brave enough to face what hurts and still choose love anyway. I wanted to stop her, to say something that would make her stay. But I realized love isn't about holding someone in place. It's about letting them be free, even if that freedom means walking away. She smiled one last time. Take care of yourself and don't forget to breathe. Then she walked away, disappearing into the soft rhythm of the city. I stood there long after she was gone, the sound of the river whispering under the streetlights. That night, when I went home, I opened my notebook and wrote, "She wasn't my ending, she was my beginning." The moment our eyes met, I didn't see forever. I saw a version of myself I wanted to grow into. It's been years since that night by the river. And yet, sometimes when the city gets quiet enough, I can still hear the sound of the water, the way it carried our words away, like secrets too heavy to keep. Life went on as it always does. New songs, new shows, new places. The world kept turning, louder and faster than before. But something inside me had shifted. I started seeing things differently. The noise no longer drowned me. It became part of the music. The chaos no longer felt like a storm. It felt like weather, something that came and went, something I could live with. She taught me that. Without even knowing it, she taught me how to exist in the middle of everything without losing myself. There were nights when I'd come home late from rehearsals and just sit in the dark watching the city lights blink like tired stars. And in those moments, I'd think of her, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Because what we shared, however brief, was real. It reminded me that behind every version of me the world demanded, there was still a man who could love quietly, honestly, without pretending. I never saw her again after that night, but her presence lingered in small, unexpected ways, in the way I spoke slower, listened more, smiled softer. In the way I started carrying a small sketchbook everywhere I went. I never told anyone why. But sometimes, before a concert or on a flight, I'd open it and draw something not well, just enough to remind myself what stillness looked like. And somewhere in between the lines, I realized something I hadn't before. She wasn't meant to stay. She was meant to remind me that love isn't about forever, it's about transformation, about meeting someone who changes the way you see the world, even if they don't stay in it. One evening, after a show in Paris, I found myself walking alone by the Seine. The air was cool, the sky a soft shade of blue-gray. Street musicians played quietly in the distance. And there it was again, that feeling, the one I'd had the night I met her. That quiet recognition that pulled towards something real. Maybe love isn't something that happens once. Maybe it happens in moments when you're brave enough to be seen, when you choose kindness over pride, when you stay open even after losing something you thought would last. People often ask me in interviews, Taehyung, what inspires your music? I never mention her name. I never even tell the story. But sometimes, when I'm writing late at night, when the melody feels like a whisper instead of a song, I think of her. And I remember that love, the real kind, doesn't always end with two people together. Sometimes it ends with one person finally finding themselves. I think she'd like to know that I did, that I found peace not in fame, not in success, but in the spaces between, in quiet mornings, in small smiles, in the understanding that what's meant for me doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. There's a line I once wrote in my journal. The moment our eyes met, I didn't just see her. I saw the life I wanted to live. And that's still true. Because when I think of her now, I don't see loss. I see gratitude. I see the version of myself she helped me become softer, calmer, more alive. Sometimes I wonder if she still draws, if she ever sketches the faces of strangers by the river, the way she used to. Maybe, somewhere, in one of those drawings, there's still a trace of me, a reminder that once we met in the middle of chaos and found peace for a little while, and maybe that's enough because love doesn't always ask to be forever. Sometimes it just asks to be real. And ours was. There are nights when I still dream of that moment, the one where our eyes met for the first time. Not because I'm stuck in the past, but because that memory feels like the beginning of something that never really ended. You know, when people talk about love at first sight, it often sounds like a fairy tale, something fragile, fleeting, almost too perfect to be real. But that night taught me that sometimes the heart recognizes something before the mind can explain it. It's not about logic, it's about truth. That truth stayed with me long after she was gone. It shaped the way I saw love. Not as a possession, not as a promise, but as a connection. Something that lives inside you, growing, reshaping, guiding. And maybe that's why I could never bring myself to call her the one who got away. Because in her leaving, she left something that stayed a part of herself, quietly alive in the music, in the way I live, in the way I love. Years later, when I stood in front of thousands of fans, their lights flickering like a field of stars, I felt it again, that same warmth in my chest. The feeling of being seen, the feeling she gave me that night. And I realized maybe that's what she gave me without knowing the courage to be open, to let the world see the real me. Love, in its truest form, doesn't always need to end in forever. Sometimes it simply teaches you how to be human. There's a song I wrote a few years ago, one I never released. It wasn't meant for charts or awards, it was just for her. Or maybe for the version of me that met her. The lyrics said, some people stay for a lifetime, others stay for a heartbeat, but both can change you just the same. And that's what she did. She changed me quietly, gently, completely. Now, when I walk through life, I try to see people the way I saw her that night. Not through what they do or what they've achieved, but through the quiet spaces between their words where truth lives. And whenever I meet someone whose presence feels familiar in that way, I don't question it anymore. I just smile and let the moment be what it is. Because maybe that's how love moves not in permanence but in presence. If you're listening to this right now, maybe you've met someone like that too. Someone who didn't stay but left a piece of peace behind. And if you haven't yet, don't rush it. The right kind of connection doesn't need to be chased. It finds you when you're ready to see it. That night, when our eyes met, I didn't just see her. I saw the man I could become, someone capable of loving without fear, without boundaries, without needing control. Someone who could look at another soul and just know. And in that sense, she was my future. Not because we were destined to be together, but because she showed me the path toward becoming the person I was meant to be. So, if you ever find yourself standing in front of someone, feeling that quiet certainty you can't explain, don't doubt it. It's rare, it's fragile, it's real, and even if it doesn't last forever, let it change you. Because love isn't measured in time, it's measured in impact. I'll never forget her eyes, not because they were beautiful, but because they held a mirror to my soul. And sometimes That's all we need to find our way home. Thank you for listening. And if you've ever felt a love that changed you, even just once, then maybe just like me, you already know some moments aren't meant to fade. They live forever in the quiet parts of your heart. Because when our eyes met, I didn't just see her future, I saw mine. I've learned something about love that I wish someone had told me earlier. It's not about finding someone who completes you, it's about finding someone who reminds you that you are already whole. That night, when our eyes met, I didn't realize it, but she wasn't walking into my life to stay. She was walking in to awaken something in me. The part that had forgotten how to feel deeply, how to see beauty in silence, how to slow down long enough to really live. For a long time, I thought real love meant forever, that if it ended, it failed. But now, I understand love doesn't always have to stay to be meaningful. Sometimes, the ones who leave are the ones who teach us the most. They show us the truth about ourselves, who we are when we care, how much we can give, how strong we can be when we have to let go. If you've ever loved someone and lost them, I want you to know this. It doesn't mean the story failed. It means it mattered. Because every heartbeat you shared, every smile, every quiet night spent just existing together that was real, that's something no ending can erase. I used to be afraid of memories like that. They hurt too much. But now I see them differently. They're not ghosts of the past, they're proof that I was alive, that I was brave enough to love even when I didn't know the ending. So if you're listening to this tonight, maybe lying in the dark, thinking about someone who changed you, don't wish it away. Hold it gently. Let it remind you that you're capable of something beautiful. Because maybe that's the point of love, not to last forever, but to leave us better than before. And to her, wherever you are, thank you. Thank you for looking at me that night and seeing more than what the world saw. Thank you for reminding me that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. And thank you for showing me that sometimes the future we see in someone's eyes isn't about them staying, it's about us finally seeing who we can become. So I'll keep walking, keep creating, keep loving, carrying that moment with me quietly, like a song no one else can hear. Because when our eyes met, I found more than love. I found myself. I've learned something about love, something no one ever really tells you. Love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who reminds you that you were already complete. That night when our eyes met, I didn't realize it then, but she wasn't meant to stay. She came into my life to awaken something that had been asleep for a long time. The part of me that forgot how to feel deeply, how to find beauty in silence, how to slow down long enough to simply exist. For so long, I believed that real love had to last forever, that if it ended, it wasn't true. But now I understand love doesn't have to stay to be real. Sometimes the people who leave are the ones who teach us the most. They show us who we are when we care, how much we're capable of giving, and how strong we can be when we finally learn to let go. If you've ever loved someone and lost them, I want you to know this. It wasn't a failure. It means it mattered. Because every moment you shared, every laugh, every quiet night where nothing needed to be said, all of that was real. And no goodbye can take that away from you. I used to be scared of memories like that. They hurt too much. But now I see them differently. They're not ghosts of the past. They're proof that I lived, that I was brave enough to love, even without knowing how the story would end. So if you're listening to this tonight lying there in the dark, thinking about someone who once changed you, don't push that feeling away. Hold it gently. Let it remind you that your heart is still capable of something beautiful. Because maybe love's purpose was never to stay forever. Maybe it was to leave us better than before. And to her, wherever you are, thank you. Thank you for seeing me that night beyond the noise, beyond the walls. Thank you for reminding me that love doesn't need to be perfect to be real. And thank you for showing me that the future I saw in your eyes wasn't about you staying, it was about me becoming. So I'll keep walking, keep creating, keep loving, carrying that moment quietly like a song only my heart remembers. Because when our eyes met, I didn't just see her. I saw my future. I saw myself. If you've made it this far, thank you. Not just for listening, but for feeling this story with me. Because stories like this, they aren't about perfect endings or grand confessions. They're about truth, about the quiet ways love changes us, even when nobody else sees it. Sometimes I think about how small that moment was. Two people meeting eyes for the first time in a world that never stops moving. And yet, that tiny moment became an entire lifetime's worth of meaning. It taught me that love doesn't always arrive with fireworks or promises. Sometimes it comes softly in the way someone looks at you, in the way silence feels safe for the first time. I don't tell this story because I'm holding on to the past. I tell it because it reminds me that we never really lose love. It just changes shape from a person into a lesson, from a moment into a memory, from something we had into something we are. So if you're sitting somewhere tonight on your bed or by your window or maybe on a long drive thinking about the person who changed you, don't regret it. Don't wish you'd never met them. Because sometimes the people who break us open are the same ones who help us finally breathe. When I close my eyes, I still see that night the river, the quiet hum of the city, the way time seemed to pause for just a second. And if I could say one last thing to her, it wouldn't be I miss you. It would be thank you. Thank you for reminding me that love isn't something we find, it's something we learn to become. So, wherever you are in the world, I hope this story reminds you of something simple. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know who will stay or who will go. Just love honestly, live gently, and let the moments that matter shape you. Because sometimes one glance can change everything. It did for me, and maybe one day when you least expect it, you'll meet someone's eyes, and for a brief, quiet second, you'll feel it too. That pull, that peace, that knowing. And when you do, don't look away. Because love, real love, starts in the silence between two hearts that finally recognize each other. This was my story, and maybe in some way it's yours too. And as the screen fades to black, I just want to say this. If this story found you tonight, maybe it's because you needed a reminder that love isn't gone just because it's over. It stays. In songs, in memories, in the way you still look at the world with softer eyes. Every person we meet leaves a piece of themselves behind, like quiet echoes in our hearts. And maybe that's what makes life beautiful, that even when people leave, the love remains. So wherever you are, whoever you're missing, I hope you carry them not with sadness, but with peace. Because some stories never really end, they just live on inside us, in the silence, in the music, and in the moments we dare to remember. This was my story. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care of your heart.